What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video. It is a somewhat snowy, I don't know, flurry of snow, I don't know what you want to call it, here in Columbus on Monday morning. We have completed week 2 of the Major 1 qualifiers, and we're heading into a multi-week break for the holidays, for New Year's. So I wanted to put a tier list for where the teams stand going into this break, talk a little bit about kind of briefly what each team needs to work on, and like who's really a contender and pretender right now, heading into the Boston event at the end of January. All right, so here is our tier list from the last video. First off, I got the right logos in this one. I got yelled out by my guy Roosevelt, who makes these tier lists. He was like, Ben, why are you using the tier list from last year? All the logos are wrong. You don't have the right Miami logo. You don't have the right Royal Ravens logo. Like, what are you doing here? So I updated it. I fixed it. It is what it is. But I want to explain, if you've not been here before, how this works. I don't do the letter thing. I hate the letter thing. We do it this way. Sunday regulars are your top 4 teams in the league. The reason I call it Sunday regulars is top 4 is who plays on Sunday at events. Potential contenders is the rest of sort of like top 6 to top 8. Kind of depends on how the teams sort of tier out in the middle. I will say right now, where the league is at, top 4 teams after the first 2 weeks were 11-1 against teams that are not in the top 4. So right now, when we talk about potential contenders, they actually contenders. You have a good weekend, maybe you can win, but top 4 is pulling away right now. Anyway, this is sort of the rest of people I think that will sort of clear the rest of the teams in the middle of the pack. Work to do. I say to finish top 6 is like ceiling. Maybe it should be top 8, to be honest. I'm actually going to add that here. Work to do to finish top 8. And then missing pieces is going to be teams that I think are a couple of roster changes away from being contenders. So let's start at the bottom. LAG. Now, after the first week, I would have been like, okay, you know what? I think us putting them in missing pieces was staying there was kind of a good play, but they had a really good result against LA Thieves this week. They thoroughly dominated them in the series. I think Thieves got beat by like 70 in the hard point, and then round 11, Karachi S&D. Okay, maybe they didn't get beat down, but you know, it was a close one. And the control was all one-way street on LAG. So I don't want to leave them in missing pieces because they have some interesting matches coming up against FaZe, Boston, RØKKR, and Miami. And I think theoretically, if they play the way they did against Thieves, I think they kind of have a chance. I'm going to slide them up here. And at the end of this, we're going to figure out who goes down to missing pieces. But there's just like a mix of a bunch of teams here. So let's start moving teams up. I think Miami, I'm going to slide up to potential contenders. You know, after the first week for Miami, we're like, okay, they beat Carolina, like, so whatever. They beat Vegas and they beat Minnesota. So I think as far as being in the work to do tier, I don't think that's a good spot because it seems like they got a handle right now on beating all of the teams I see below them. Can they beat the top 4 teams? Well, they're going to play OpTic when they get back in January. They're going to play Seattle. So we'll see kind of where they stand amongst those top 6, top 8. But undefeated in S&D, undefeated control. Really happy with where Miami is right now. If you're a Miami fan, I think they are, in my mind, top 6 heading into the... I really don't think then I can move any one of these next 6 teams up a tier. I mean, we can go kind of one by one in the spot. Vegas lost to Miami and then got smoked by New York. Still have not won a control at all this season. They are 0 for 4 in that game mode. Respawn looks okay. Kind of made that last map against Miami a little bit interesting on Invasion, but Miami was able to close it out. And the Skid Row against New York was winnable. I felt like Vegas kind of trolled the middle of that map. Like that was a winnable situation, but there still seem like a decent search team. To me, my issue with this Vegas team is just they just get in winnable positions and they can't close out. And at some point that luck is going to like run out or it's going to go the other way. Gonna lead them in work to do. They've got OpTic, FaZe, in Toronto coming up after the break. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think this team is gonna be 1-6 and starting on losing bracket. I don't know if they're winning either of those matches, to be honest, when they get back in January, but we'll see. Next up, we have the Boston Breach. They did get a smack 3-0 by LA Thieves in the beginning of the week, but then they had a great series against Toronto. So I'm going to move them. I mean, I don't really want to like think too much about ordering this tier, like something like this. I don't know. Whatever. We'll leave it as is. But you know, some good momentum for Boston heading into the break. I'm still very concerned about their S&D. They obviously took one on Karachi against Toronto, and they looked pretty solid on the map. But every other search we've seen so far from them this year has been iffy, very iffy. They blow a lot of man up situations. They get caught sprinting. It seems like they're caught in two different ways to play search. That's the game that I want to see them focus on, because slaying power, the sort of getting lost ability of players like Capsidal and Snoopy, and I love Preston, but he's an inconsistent slayer. Like, there's a top end of this team. They just don't get there enough. In Respawn, the S&D, if they don't get better, they're screwed. So they've got LAG, Miami, and New York coming up after the break. There are wins there. There are doable wins there, and they can sneak their ways in the winners bracket, or they can start in losers. Really, it's up to these guys to figure out how to make best use of this next 3 weeks. I can't move them up to potential contenders. They haven't shown enough that they are anywhere in the top 6. And I think Thieves kind of the opposite of Boston this week. Like, beat Boston, and we're like, okay, well, maybe this Thieves team turned a corner, and then they laid an absolute egg against LAG. I just don't understand this Thieves franchise, how they can't beat LAG. Doesn't matter which version of LAG teams. And man, they've had some terrible LAG teams that have won this in this series. I just don't understand it. This Thieves team, hardpoint iffy, S&D, inability to close, blow man up situations. I mean, I can name a lot of problems with their S&D, but it's not a good spot. Control actually looks not too bad, but if you're not winning respawns, you're not winning searches, like, being good at control gets you what exactly? So I think they got to put in a lot of work over this break to kind of get on the same page. And I think work on their composure. For me, if they're this looks like a team right now, with the way that the last 3 series have gone, if they don't win map 1, it's over. There's been a couple of teams like that in Call of Duty history. Famously, they lose map 1, they tell. And I feel like this team right now might be one of those teams. So we'll see what they can do. Toronto, New York, and Carolina coming up in January. It's a tough schedule. Toronto, New York, Carolina. They're sitting at 1 and 3 right now, so they're gonna need at least to grab 2 of these. They're gonna need to upset either Toronto or New York. Not looking good for Thieves for winners bracket, I'll tell you that. All right, let's talk about Carolina, bro. Slammed by Toronto, slammed by OpTic. They played 6 maps this weekend, and I don't think they were competitive in any of the 6 maps they played. Like, I think they got off to a decent start on... Actually, I don't know if they got a decent start on any of the maps. I don't even remember, but that's how bad they got slammed. The only maps they've won so far were the comeback maps against Vegas and the reverse sweep. Outside that, like, Miami series was close. They didn't win a single map, and the 2 this week. Like, this Carolina team's in real trouble. They don't look good. They didn't look happy this weekend. They realistically should be 0-4. Realistically, because I think Vegas even tossed that last map against Carolina, and they're not really good at any game mode. They're not really good at any particular map. You know, they do have a couple of maps they have a win record on. They've 1-0 in Karachi hardpoint, but against good teams like Karachi, they're really going to win that. Invasion control, same thing. Like, it was an invasion control against Vegas. Like, I don't know. And Vegas hasn't won a control. So, I don't know with this Carolina team. I think they are in real trouble. And I'm going to be honest to you, actually, I'm sliding them down to missing pieces, because I just don't see how they're going to beat anyone above them without making a roster change. I look at their schedule, Minnesota FaZe and LA Thieves, and I don't know if there's a win there. I really don't. So, and I think then we finish up with the Minnesota RØKKR, and it's just a question of, for me, like, do I want to slide RØKKR down there to that tier? And it sucks because I actually think the talent team with Linz, Vivid, and Big Wake and Lamar, like, this team is 0-3 right now. They're in a really bad spot. They only had 1 match this weekend, mind you. It was against Miami, map 1. It was really close. They made a really good comeback in that map. The S&D was a battle, but Miami kind of clutch up. The control was close. And then the sub base, I felt like Miami kind of controlled well. So I thought they played decent to an extent in the series, but those are wins you got to have against Miami if they want to prove themselves. And they got New York, Carolina, LAG, and Seattle coming up. There are wins here potentially for this team. So I'm going to leave them in work to do. We didn't see enough from them this week for me to, like, make any crazy takes on it, but I just, Big Wake and Reese got to contribute a little bit more in this team. They got slammed in a couple of these series. I know they played OpTic, and that's tough, but I want to see more. I'm just deciding if I want to move Vegas down to the bottom tier. I think, unfortunately for me, because of Vegas's inability to, like, win, I'm putting them here. This is in no order, by the way. I'm just in no order. I just feel like these 2 teams ain't doing anything unless they make a roster change, Carolina and Vegas. So this is kind of how I feel right now. All right, I think the rest of this is going to pretty much stick. Seattle had a good first week, and then they ran to the OpTic and FaZe buzzsaw this week. Seattle didn't win a single hard point this week. They went 0-4. They won a control. They won S&D. And that's about it. I'm not, like, super panicking with Seattle. I think this is a good reality check of the kind of discipline they need as a team. Specific examples come to mind is this Skid Row against OpTic, the Invasion Hardpoint to finish the series against FaZe, where I think Seattle had a chance and kind of, it really came down to a couple of gunfight situationals, miscommunications on the way they played setups in Hardpoint. Actually, literally on rotation, literally when the hail popped, they trolled in both these situations. So if they clean that up, their search is still really, really good. They look very serviceable in control in that swing mode. If they can clean up some of the respawn issues, I like Seattle's ability to beat everybody below them. Are they going to beat consistently New York, FaZe, OpTic, Toronto? I think they might be able to sneak up since on land. I'm still a little high on Seattle, but if Toronto, Miami, and RØKKR, and I'm going to be very disappointed if this team goes on a 4-game L streak and they've got to beat Minnesota to make bracket. I'm hoping they can take one of the next two and get some 4 wins here going into the first event. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a momentum swing for this team. I'm curious to see what they do over the next 3 weeks. All right, let's finish up. We're talking about the top 4. We'll start with Toronto, who had Carolina this week and, I mean, basically kicked their feet up in that series. And then they played Boston and they got 3-0'd. And this is a classic, bro. I remember this last year. Like, you get a couple of these weird series from Toronto where they just won them as an off day. In this case, I think Envoy had probably one of his worst series as a pro yesterday. So I'm not stressing too much for Toronto, although, you know, I'm sure they're not happy with the execution. You can't be tossing away points, especially if you want to have really good seeding. You want to fight for the #1 seed throughout the season. But I'm not worried about Toronto because when they're in gear, they look great. In most game modes, I will say maybe, you know, one criticism I have is, you know, they lost an S&D to LAG. They lost an S&D to Boston. Maybe that game mode right now needs a little bit of polish based on the 3 series they played. But small sample size, the respawn does look pretty good, especially the hardpoint to me right now. And they've got matches against Seattle, LA Thieves, New York, and Vegas coming up, which I think is a very interesting set, and we'll test where Toronto's at. So I think you feel good. You've got some good. You don't have freebies coming up, I think, with the Seattle and New York. I think those are challenges. Thieves, they played a potential should be a challenge. Then Vegas, I think they have more class than them. And more talent. I expect Toronto to win most of those. We'll see how they develop, but they're not moving them out of the top 4. They're still really good. Another team, and I think maybe the one team that I feel like has probably done the best job adapting from week 1 to week 2 is OpTic Texas. A nice 3-1 victory versus Seattle, and they completely outclassed Carolina. This team is 6-1 in hardpoint. They won both S&Ds they played this week. The biggest thing for me watching them play is I think they've seemed to figure out a little bit of their pacing issues, especially with the way that pace of Pred was playing in that first series against New York. I think they're finally starting to get into comfort in the way that they want to play hardpoint. I don't know why people keep playing them in Skid Row. I think that map should just, unless you are the other best team in Skid Row, this OpTic team is so good at just getting the best out of P3s, P4s, P5s. Get Bruce on top of P2. He's a problem. He's not dying up there. Like, I don't know about playing that team on that map. I think that was certainly a decision out of Carolina. Maybe they just suck at terminal, so I don't know. But I like where OpTic is at in all game modes. You know, look at their record. You're like, 2-3 in search. I mean, to be fair, those 3 L's were all game 5s. Other than that, I really like where their S&D was at this week. Vegas, Miami, FaZe coming up, though. Vegas is a dub. The Miami and FaZe match is a little bit of a step up. So I like where the schedule is kind of building this OpTic team towards. At Boston, I think they're going to be a contender at the event. All right, next up we have Atlanta FaZe. They are 3-0 going into the break. FaZe only had 1 match this week against Seattle, and they were able to take it. You know, the high-rise S&D was the map that they dropped. They looked pretty dominant in the Karachi control, definitely outslayed Seattle by a lot. They pretty much controlled the hardpoint Karachi from start to finish. The only blemish I think for FaZe was that Invasion hardpoint got a little iffy towards the end, but FaZe got a really nice P5 break in. I would say was good work out of them, plus a combo troll from Seattle. But I think if you're FaZe, you like where your hardpoint's at, even though these maps are close. They played 3 of them on Karachi and Invasion. They haven't played a Skid Row or a sub base yet. Yes, S&D looks really good, is what to expect with this team. And I think they actually have gotten a lot cleaner in control. That Invasion control they played the first series against Boston was a bit trolly, but since then I think they've cleaned it up. Only 3 series so far for FaZe, so don't want to freak out too much. But yeah, it's a very consistent team. They've been a consistent team the course of the CDL. I don't see that changing, and they've got I would say a very cupcake schedule coming up after the break. LAG, Vegas, Carolina, and OpTic. Like, they're getting to 6 wins, and they're going to play OpTic, and we'll see how that match goes because OpTic has had their number, but FaZe will be in winner's bracket with a top seed going into Boston for sure. And we're going to wrap this up with your defending COD champs, New York. They played only one series this week against the Las Vegas Legion. And like I said earlier in this video, map 1 was a little bit close. The S&D Skid Row was a little bit back and forth, but a lot of nice clutches from the New York Subliners. And then they closed out the control. And I think the biggest thing for me with New York is just their real like cohesion. S&D, they look very much on the same page on the way they want to play search, and they haven't lost one yet. They played 5 and they've got 5 W's. I think that is a great start, and they've got those wins on a variety of maps. The only S&D map they haven't played so far is Invasion Search. So I think New York, if they continue, this is the same thing as last year, they can play S&D at this high of a level. The talent on this team with Paco, especially Hydra, like they're going to be very competitive in all of these series, even though I think their control right now is only okay. Hardpoint, is decent. They have dropped a couple, one to LAG, one to OpTic. So there's some work there, but obviously, got 3 weeks, new spawns with the new patch. We'll see how it goes. But if you're a New York fan, like where you're at, they've got Minnesota Thieves, Toronto, and Boston coming up, which is an interesting schedule. Minnesota and Thieves are very much under pressure right now, so those should be a little bit of a challenge. And then Toronto will be a fun one, and then Boston. I actually think New York's got probably one of the tougher schedules of the top teams, because I know Vegas' schedule is. But New York, I think coming back those 4 matches should be really good practice. They've already got 3 wins, so they're in winner's bracket at worst to the bottom seed if they go on some sort of negative run here. But yeah, feel good about New York being competitive for Boston right now. So yeah, that's the tier list for me. People might kind of disagree maybe with how the bottom 6 is sort of situated right now. I just feel like Carolina and Vegas are just without a roster change right now. I think they're donezo. I almost think RØKKR is kind of in the same point in LAG, but I moved LAG up because I want to give them credit for the fact that they've been grinding out some of these series, and they look more competitive than Carolina and Vegas for sure. But then I feel like this is a pretty good split in how the 6 is done. So we will probably do this again maybe before the next week of matches, which will be in like almost a month, maybe after week 3. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. We will see what we want to do to maybe take a look at this tier list again. All right, that'll do it for this video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. We got some more content coming up this week, so make sure you check it out. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.